All right, so on the news today, we're talking about raising our debt ceiling by 2.5 trillion, and the kicker is that it will mean the issue doesn't have to come up again until maybe our children grow up. No, 2023. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about my first visualization of a trillion. Now, when I was working on my PhD, we ran into our first $1 trillion budget deficit in 2008, right? A year before I went to school in Rochester Institute of Technology, where I pursued my PhD. So, trillion became a household word that year because of the budget deficit, because of healthcare problems that we were dealing with. This was just before Obamacare got signed. I think credit card debt in the United States, or maybe it was mortgage debt, hit $1 trillion for the first time. And the word trillion just became a household word. It was no big deal, right? Everybody wanted to become a millionaire when I was a kid. Now it was a trillionaire that we wanted to become. Now, I was working on a math problem called Ramsey theory, and there was this big unsolved problem. How big does a graph have to be in order to guarantee that you're going to have a clique of 5 vertices that are all connected by the same color, right? So you got a big enough graph, right? Imagine you had, well, look at the spread of COVID-19, right? If you connected the dots between every 2 people who have ever spread COVID-19 against each other, that would be a graph, right? Have 8 billion vertices and a bunch of edges, right? At least hundreds of millions of edges. Now, if your graph is big enough, you're guaranteed to find all sorts of patterns in them, right? Actually, that is a graph theory problem that we're working on right now, right? Called contact tracing, right? I bet our contact tracing algorithm takes advantage of various graph theory properties and all that. So I was working on this problem called Ramsey theory, and I came up with some heuristics on what this hypothetical graph would look like, and then I wrote a search algorithm that would search for this graph given what we know about the properties of that graph. Right? I know it's a little bit technical for my viewers, but I'll get to the interesting thing in a second. Now, that algorithm I knew would take a long time to run. I wanted to estimate just how long it would take and how much time we would save by having all these heuristics. So I ran what I estimated would be 1/1000th of the program, and it took about 1,000 seconds to run that 1,000,000th of a program. It's kind of hard to explain how I estimated it to be 1,000,000,000. It was a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the algorithm, which I estimated it to be 1,000,000th, and it took 1,000 seconds to run. And 1,000,000,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000,000. So I thought, okay, this program will take 1,000,000,000 seconds. Well, that's not so bad. Maybe a few more improvements. If we can get it down to a few billion, I could start running it. Maybe my children will see the result. I thought 1,000,000,000 seconds was like a few decades or maybe a century or 2. That's what I was thinking. Well, I'll let you take a guess at how long 1,000,000,000 seconds is. It's over 30,000 years. And at the time, they gave me a very nice office to use when I was working on my PhD. I actually ended up living in the office. I had some financial difficulty my second year at the PhD program, and I moved out of my apartment and into the office. And so I imagined the computer in the office still chugging away at R55. The entire building covered under miles of snow and ice from the next ice age. You know, humans are long since extinct, and the computer is still looking for R55. Right? I was imagining that. I do want to start running that program one day, and I'm hoping for the best. I'm wondering where would be a good place to keep a computer for 30,000 years. I have some ideas, right? I'm thinking either geothermal, bury the computer, right? Especially in Wallace, Idaho, where they have a lot of silver mines. You know, we could take an old abandoned mine that nobody cares about anymore, bury the computer there, have it hooked up to geothermal energy. Or the other places, obviously, in space, right? You'll probably have to go to at least geosynchronous orbit, or better yet, leave the... Well, I guess leaving the solar system is tricky, right? Because in 30,000 years you won't have energy. But geostationary, I would imagine, in 30,000 years, it'll be a mess up there, right? Just like low Earth orbit right now. So maybe at least a heliocentric orbit, right? Kind of like Parker's Solar Probe. I bet that has a better chance of lasting 30,000 years, right? Although broadcasting the answer back to Earth might be tricky after all that time, right?